Hey guys, this time on the 2013 EB Games Expo discussion we're going to be talking about the Xbox One and PlayStation 4. This is about specifically the consoles themselves, not the games or anything like that, but just talking about how they worked and what we got to see and stuff like that. Now, how about we talk about the PS4 first, because we don't actually have a lot to say about that, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was in a nice glass case.
Yes.
And it looked particularly pretty.
It did look better than the Xbox One, I will give it that.
Yep, it did.
It was much slimmer, I think, and smaller.
Yep.
The game cases looked kind of cool, like we got to see the cover artwork for Infamous Second Son and Knack and Killzone and stuff like that, so that all looked fine. Yeah, it'll fall in line with the PS3 boxes just fine.
Yeah, but I have to ask, what did you think of the controller in your hand?
Yes, the controller in my hand. Well, it was quite light.
Very light.
Rather non-existent.
Yes,
but
we never got to touch the PlayStation 4 because the line was forever long.
Hour and a half lineup.
Yeah, and I thought, well, we could either do 4 or 5 more games at that time, or we could wait in line to play some PlayStation games.
And we couldn't record it even if we got up there, because filming of any PS4 content whatsoever was completely...
forbidden.
Yes, forbidden. So, yeah, we were really quite disappointed about that, because, you know, we got to do so much with the Xbox One, and we didn't get to touch anything with the PS4 just because of how Sony had everything set up.
Yeah. I think when we went there, both of us had the expectation that Microsoft would be very closed off and...
very insular.
And Sony would be very, come touch our console. Very opposite to that. It was absolute opposite to that.
It was totally. So basically, to get to a PS4, you had to line up for an hour and a half, then you got to go up a staircase to the second level of the PlayStation booth. And up there they had some things set up. They had Knack up there, they had Killzone, Shadowfall, they had Drive Club, and most annoyingly for us, they actually had Infamous Second Son, because we both really wanted to try that out. And it was listed on the website as being only in the exhibition, but as it turns out they had it playable up there. We found out from the rep.
Yeah, when we asked them, they said they had it playable up there. Although we had to explain to them which game that was. So.
Yes, that's true. But once we said it's the one with the red fire where you burn things and stuff like that, he got it. But yeah, no, it's definitely disappointing that we didn't get to do anything with the PS4. But we did at least get to see it, and it does look nice. The controller looks fine. That's really all we can say about it. So, any final thoughts about it?
Not really. I mean, we didn't do anything with it.
We saw footage of it on a screen.
Yeah, very nice footage.
Yeah. Alright then, so I guess we'll move on to the Xbox One, and there's actually quite a lot to talk about here for us. A
very lot. So the way Microsoft had their setup was they had 2 stories, same with PlayStation, but PlayStation had the PS3 and Vita on the ground floor. Microsoft had set up... They had the games which didn't draw the massive crowds on the ground floor, which allowed people to sort of pick up and play them.
Everyone got their hands on the Xbox One.
Yeah, within 5 minutes, Josh and I had both felt the controller and felt how it feels in the hands, and also seen the game in action. First game we played was Killer Instinct.
Yes, that's right. And then probably about, not even 10 minutes after we finished that, we were on Kinect Rivals.
Oh, I would say less than that. I would say within 2 minutes.
Yep, and then a few minutes after that, we were on Forza.
Yep. So we got to play all the games on there that we wanted to.
Yep.
Apart from World of Tanks, which I think is on the Xbox 360 anyway. And Zoo Tycoon Adventures and
yeah, Zoo Tycoon was down there. I didn't even know that game existed for Xbox One.
we would have lined up with that one, but we didn't want to wait the 3-hour time to get through the crowd, so we just thought we'd give that a miss. But sorry to disappoint the 3 fans out there who are desperately wanting to watch that.
Yes.
So, from all the promotional material I'd seen, I'd expected the Xbox One to be a lot bigger than it was. It's actually quite small. Nowhere near as small as the PlayStation, but I wouldn't say it was massive. It's a machine, but I think that if you have a home entertainment system, it'll fit in there.
Yeah, I'd definitely say there's no worries about that. I mean, my take on the Xbox One's design is that it's a VHS player.
Yeah, which is why I'm glad that I won't be seeing one, because we'll be under a case.
Let's just hope there are no overheating problems this time then.
Let's hope. So, Josh, what did you think of the controller?
The controller was actually brilliant. It's hard to actually label the differences from the Xbox 360 controller, because they are very similar. But the Xbox One controller did have a different feel to it. I think the one thing that we were actually comparing was the bumpers.
Yeah, the bumpers are looser. or
and they had much more of a definitive click to them.
No, I felt the exact opposite. On every one I played, the bumpers. Did you hear that sound?
Yes, yep.
That's my Xbox 360 controller bumpers. It's got a distinctive click. The left bumper for every controller I touched was weak, and it responded, but I didn't feel any click at all.
That's interesting, because I didn't notice that. I thought it was actually a bit more distinctive, but because the button itself was larger, I think it was just, felt a bit different. That was kind of different to touch, because the bumpers on the Xbox 360 controller are actually quite thin.
They are quite thin. I think, to be honest, after so many years of playing with the Xbox 360 controller, the changes were more noticeable to me.
I would give you the definitive opinion on that, yes.
Yes, but I would say that because I've spent so much time with the controller, the Xbox 360 one, I have to, it will take a while for me to decide if I actually like the changes. I'm sure I will. I'm sure that it does feel like a better controller. The battery pack's gone inside.
Yes, that was a good improvement. The battery pack isn't gone, I should say. It's still actually there, it's just they've woven it into the design of the controller, from what I can tell.
Yes.
Because you can take it off on the back.
Yep. The D-pad I didn't use in-game, but I did use it sort of to see how it felt. It felt a lot better.
I actually forgot to do that. Okay, that's good. Because the D-pad is one of my major gripes with the Xbox 360 controller.
The triggers are a lot better. Just hands down better. I will say the analog sticks are interesting because they are, they're rougher.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, the sensitivity of them I don't think is much different. It was hard for me to notice. They feel firmer in your hands, and I don't know, they're different. I wouldn't say they're not better or worse, but they do feel very different to the Xbox 360s.
Actually, one thing I do want to bring up is the fact that the controller itself, the material that's made out of, the texture of it felt quite different.
It's very different, yes. Although, to be honest, right now I'm using my chrome-plated, which isn't chrome-plated at all, but 360 controller, so it's nothing like the original Xbox.
No, okay, well, I mean, I've just got the, I don't know what it's called, but the one that came with the slim Xbox.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it felt very different to that. It's smooth, I guess?
Yep.
Comparatively, so... Yeah, that was just, that was the most immediate thing I noticed. Not a big deal, it felt totally fine. I acclimatized to that instantly.
Yep.
But,
the start buttons, or sorry, not start, the Xbox buttons now quite far up the controller.
Yes, we didn't get to press that one.
Well, they did. They said not to because we'll shut the machines down and destroy everything.
Yeah, so it caused a glitch apparently. But we were told that people had been doing it anyway. We stayed away from that button.
But I mean, if you like the Xbox 360 controller, which I know a lot of people do, I do myself, it might take a while, or a day or two to get used to it in your hands and get used to the layout because it's changed just enough that it's not the same controller. It's
a noticeable change, even if you don't actually know exactly why certain things are different.
But it's familiar and it's better.
Yeah.
And we should also talk about the Rumble.
Well, why don't you talk about it, because you spent the most time with the Rumble.
So, yep. The Rumble has changed to be more, well, it moves around your hand, which...
Is there a better way of saying that? Is there...
Not at all. Moves around your hand is the... No, okay, so... I don't know how to say it, to be honest. How would you say it?
Basically, okay, so you were playing Forza Motorsport 5 to test out the Rumble. And basically what happened is that your car was kind of like... where your car was, and where it was driving... was kind of relevant to the rumble in the controller. So, for example, if you were driving in the middle of the road, the rumble was kind of like in the center of the controller, whereas if you veered off to the side of a road or something and were driving on a dirt road to your left, you would get the rumble on the left.
Yep. And, for example, there was a point where I hit a car, but I happened to be turning at the same time, which means the front left of my car hit him initially, but by the end of it, it was my front right, which was rumbling against him, and the rumble felt like it moved across my hand. It didn't fully, but it sort of gave that impression to me. Okay. Which felt quite good.
Going off a little bit what we played, I would say it has at least the potential to be the best rumble feature that we've seen.
Yep, absolutely.
And I mean, I think about the original Xbox controller actually, and I think about the rumble because that could actually have quite an intense rumble in it. Because I think of Grabbed by the Ghoulies on Xbox original. I was about to call it Xbox One. But that game used rumble really well, and it's used it to basically do things like your heartbeat and that sort of thing. And it was a really powerful rumble. And using the Xbox One controller, it actually made me think of that. Just a little thing I noticed.
Yeah, I didn't play much Xbox original, so the rumble there, I couldn't
compare it to.
I'm sure not. There is another controller we should probably talk about, which the the Xbox One has.
Well, the controller is you.
Oh, shut up.
Okay, so the Kinect 2, which you tried with Kinect Sports Rivals.
Yep. Initially, the Kinect was quite responsive and also quite accurate. I felt that if I moved my hands forward slightly, it would turn slightly. And I was quite impressed until I think it was the second lap.
Yes, then, it was just after you completed the first lap, which was interesting.
Yeah. And then it just lost me. I couldn't find my hands, couldn't find, what I was doing in relation, and I had the representative trying to tell me to do certain things.
Well, you stepped to the left, and then it started working a bit better for a moment, and then
for like a second or two, and then it just lost me again. And I wasn't sure I was doing something wrong, but all I'll say is that turn to the left is now embedded into my mind, because that's all I wanted it to do, and it wouldn't.
And there's, some great footage. I turned the camera off in the end because it was just dizzy trying to turn around.
And it was embarrassing. I mean,
well, basically we're running out of battery, so it wasn't worth capturing it. But,
that's fair. But I mean, I'll say initially I was impressed, and it's only one example. It could be more responsive. It could be better under different circumstances.
We should actually mention the fact that there's lots of flashing lights at the expo. I mean, the cameras had a hell of a time actually focusing in some areas and stuff like that. So I'm sure that would have had at least some impact on the Kinect.
Yeah, and they had 3 people, standing
side by side, yeah.
So, I mean, it worked initially, I'll say that. It'd have to be something you'd have to test more, like, when you actually have one, if you ever get one. But,
it looks like a definite improvement, though, I would say.
Oh, it was definitely an improvement.
Because for the time it worked, from an audience point of view anyway, you looked like you were really, one-to-one with the game.
Yeah.
So that...
And it felt that way as well, playing it. But also, my arms got tired after 30 seconds. So, which brings us back to the original point when the first Kinect came out, that no one wants to stand up after a hard day's work, which I've never done in my life, and, stand in front of their TV and flail their arms around.
Well, in fairness, with a jet ski game that you played, you shouldn't have to stand up, because it was only your arms.
Yeah, very true.
But
they're
anyway.
not going to give us chairs.
No,
that's
of course
really
not.
Kinect. I think that we couldn't give you sort of a real understanding of what it was because I only played it for a few minutes. But I'll just say it worked and then it didn't.
So it has the potential, I guess we could say.
And now performance. What did you think, Josh?
I didn't really notice any hiccups. Honestly, the games looked gorgeous, and I think. Was it Rise we were saying that we noticed a frame rate drop briefly?
Well, that's the thing.
For a brief second?
Yeah. So if we go by performance alone, I was during the opening cutscene when you were walking through the gladiatorial pit to go to the actual arena. I noticed that the frame rate was not even 30. Like it wasn't. It was below 30 frames per second. But
I should note, actually, that mine only dropped for a second at the beginning of that cutscene, then it was pretty consistent.
See, mine...
But yours was obviously much worse.
Yeah, mine was below 30 all the way until we started playing the game. But once we started playing the game, it was a solid frame rate. I couldn't tell you what the frame rate was, but it was solid and it didn't drop at all. And it's also... We're talking about performance.
Yes.
Rise wasn't in 1080. It was in the 920 or whatever it is. They put it 900.
Some resolution, yeah.
Yeah, whatever they put it into. So,
I'll be honest though, didn't notice.
I did, but that's because, I've got a new monitor recently. I'm sort of used to seeing 1080, so... But it still looked good. It was still a beautiful game, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that they chose to go with a slightly lower resolution. I mean, particularly for a company like Crytek, who they usually push everything as much as they can, so it's interesting at least.
It is interesting. I think that they've tried as hard as they can, and they probably could do more, but I guess it's just coming down from internal testing with the game itself and seeing how it runs on the finalised Xbox One and everything, and now that it's all coming together, they're seeing what they can actually get out of the consoles, at least in the first year when no one knows how to make anything from the thing.
Yes, I mean, of course, the best looking games and the best running games are usually at the end of a console's lifespan. I guess one thing we should mention, though, is we're talking about Rise in terms of performance, and the rep did say that it is actually an older build.
Yeah.
So, just something to keep in mind there.
It was the multiplayer demo from, I think it was Gamescom?
Yes, except we did have a slight change, but anyway, we'll save that for the Rise discussion video.
So we should.
But anyway, so the Xbox One, any other details that you can think of?
No, well, not off the top of my head. I mean, I'll be picking up the Xbox One. That's the console I chose. So I'm very much disappointed that I didn't get to see the PlayStation 4 because I had nothing to compare it to. But as far as next generation consoles go, it's kind of what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting my computer's worth of power in it. And I love the controller. It'll take a bit of time for me to get used to it, but I love it. And I don't really care what the console looks like.
Well, for me, I basically came into the Xbox One with, I wouldn't say no interest, because I'm interested in whatever piece of random technology comes out of the game industry, but I didn't really expect to buy it. I basically thought, like the Xbox 360, I would purchase it probably at the end of this next generation. That's just kind of what I do with Microsoft consoles. I did that with the original Xbox, and as I say, I did that with the Xbox 360. However, I've got to say, the Xbox One, just the way that Microsoft had everything set up, the way that we got our hands on so many games, and how those games were really good, I want an Xbox One.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if this was E3, then
yes,
Microsoft would have won the show.
From at the very least, we're talking from people that are, the perspective of people that are on the show floor.
Yeah.
And that changes things a lot, because, if you're talking about E3, I mean, E3 is usually one on trailers and things like that.
Very true.
But, I just, because Microsoft had everything totally accessible, they had all...
And filmable.
Most of it was filmable, yes. So that kind of openness was great. They obviously had confidence in their games. Actually, if I think about it, the two games that weren't filmable, basically Rise and Dead Rising 3, are both third-party games. Forza, Killer Instinct, and Kinect Sports Rivals are all Microsoft first or second parties. So, to me, that says from Microsoft that we have a lot of confidence in the stuff that we have made. We are happy to let you film it. If third parties don't want to, letting you film our games, then that's fine, they can do what they want. But in terms of our games that we have made, we are confident that they will run fine, and we are confident that real-time footage will not reflect badly on them in any way.
And I don't think they did.
Anyway, so Microsoft really impressed me, and they took me from not interested to purchasing. Eventually.
Eventually.
We'll see when that actually is, but, just coming off the Expo, I want to play more of the games that we got our hands on.
As do I, and we will, because the consoles come out in, next month.
Yes. Well, I guess that's all we can say, so definitely looking forward to the Xbox One. Wish we'd got hands-on with the PS4, and it'll be interesting to see what next month brings. It's going to be a very busy month. Yeah, so thanks a lot for watching, guys, and we'll see you later.
Cheerio. Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about how wonderful Microsoft was and how piss-poor Sony and Nintendo's effort was. So let's take it away, Microsoft representative. Oh, hi guys, Microsoft is so amazing. I think everyone should pre-order the Xbox One and take a big fat dump on Sony. There you go, there's your intro. Deal with it, or do your own.